Herr Minister, ich stimme Ihnen zu, dass in den letzten 25 Jahren nicht alles perfekt gelaufen ist. Aber es hat auch noch ein hohes Maß an Übereinstimmung mit Russland gegeben. Und wir waren kurz vor dem Abschluss eines Partnerschaftsabkommens, das die Modernisierung auch der russischen Wirtschaft als Ziel hat und viele andere Beispiele. Aber wir haben, glaube ich, ein Regelwerk in Europa geschaffen, das bedeutet territoriale Integrität und Souveränität der Völker. Und beide Prinzipien sind verletzt worden.
Territorial integrity and the self-determination of the people, and both these rights have been violated in Ukraine. And Ukraine is not a Ukrainian party, but that Russia is party to that conflict. I think this is something that we have to acknowledge to be able to assess the situation correctly. So we need a fair assessment of the domestic situation in Ukraine. Your description of the situation in Ukraine is not correct. It was not a coup d'etat, but it was an agreement with President Yanukovych that had been approved of by the majority of parliament. 2 elections, free elections took place, where 80% spoke out in favor for the European Union. The nationalists and separatists only received 2 or 3% of the votes. And that is the situation, the true situation in domestic politics in Ukraine. And I think that there should be no reason in the 21st century that the principle of Helsinki of territorial integrity and sovereignty should be violated. Part of this is that every nation, including Ukraine, of course, should be free to decide with whom they want to sign an economic or trade agreement. We don't want to fall back into the old times where the sovereign rights of the people are being influenced.
I'm sure that this will provide for a good TV report. You know, there are international rules which are sometimes interpreted differently, and the different actions may be interpreted differently. Sometimes you see opposite interpretations. What happened in Crimea is self-determination as defined in the UN Charter. The UN Charter includes several principles, and self-determination of nations, the right to self-determination, is one of the key principles. Wait a second. You should read the UN Charter. Territorial integrity and sovereignty have to be respected. Yes, they have to be respected. And the General Assembly adopted a declaration. Well, it may seem funny to you. It was. I also felt funny as I was listening to you, but I did not laugh. The General Assembly adopted a declaration which explains how all these principles work together. It reaffirms that territorial integrity and sovereignty are inalienable, and countries that want their sovereignty to be respected should respect the rights of the people living in those countries, and they should not prevent the exercise of self-determination right by brutal force. When you say that what happened in Kyiv was the implementation of an agreement signed by President Yanukovych because they had elections there, well, actually the next day after this agreement was signed, and regardlessly of where Yanukovych was, and he was in Ukraine actually, his residence, the building of his administration, the government building were attacked, in addition to many other buildings and people who were attacked and burned on Independence Square. So this agreement was destroyed, and the agreement witnessed by the ministers of Germany, France, Poland, and Russia. And Mr. Sikorsky is present here. He can tell his side of the story. But the first point of this agreement spoke about setting up the government of national unity. These are the key words here. The the goal of national unity cannot determine on what happened to one person, Yanukovych alone. So if Yanukovych disappears, what? You can ignore this requirement of national unity and just seize power? No, this is unacceptable. So instead of the government of national unity, which was supposed to prepare a new constitution by September, and then based on this new constitution, a general election was supposed to be called. This was the sequence of events that was planned. But the starting point is national unity. That's how you start. Then you come up with a new constitution which would take into account the opinion of all the people around the country. But instead of that, Arseniy Yatsenyuk, when this agreement was forgotten, Yatsenyuk went to the Independence Square and he said, "Congratulations, we've come up with the government of winners. Government of winners." That's what he said. Then some territories in Ukraine rebelled, and they started protesting, and they said they did not agree with the results of the coup, and then they were suppressed, people were arrested, their leaders were arrested, leaders who were against the coup. Who attacked whom? Was it Donetsk and Lugansk who attacked Kiev? No. They sent military forces to those territories, trying to establish their power by force. And then Crimea saw what was happening. Right sector, at the early stage, they tried to seize government buildings, but fortunately, people there stopped them. Self-defense forces stopped them from doing that. They held a referendum on independence. There was no referendum in Kosovo, by the way, even though President Obama, for some reason, said that Kosovo had a referendum. That's why it's a perfect example. There was no referendum in Kosovo. And there are many other examples. Like Germany, it was reunited without any referendums. And we actually supported this process. When World War II was over, you may remember, the Soviet Union was against dividing Germany. Okay, thank you. You know, another problem today is that when we talk about methods used against instead of direct dialogue, another problem is the Ukrainian president no longer has the monopoly on the use of force. You have private military battalions operating, and they are much better paid than regular military forces like Azov. I just recently gave you a quote from their commander. Sometimes they're led by ultra-nationalist elements. So my answer to you, Mr. Brok, I've known you for a long time and you've been to Moscow. My answer to you is very simple. If you want to criticize us, give angry speeches, which will reinforce your position in the European Parliament, you're welcome to do so. But if you want to talk to us, let's sit down, let's reaffirm Helsinki principles. Let's take a look and see why in certain cases you don't think they were violated, and while in some other cases you say they are violated. Actually, a rating agency based in Munich, GfK, Ukrainian. It's a Ukrainian agency, but they're headquartered in Munich. They did a poll recently, and more than 90% of the people in the Crimea said that they are in favor of reunifying with Russia. There were 2 or 3% of people against it, and just a few percent who were undecided. These are statistics. Like our EU partners told us that the key principle is self-determination, but you were talking about countries. In this case, we have self-determination of people based on a centuries-long history. We can discuss all the things. If you really want to understand our position, what we proceed from, we can do that. President Putin often talks about that. Of course, you can laugh at it. Well, if you want to laugh, you may have fun. It's okay. It's okay to have fun. Makes you life longer. Anyway, thank you.
Thank you, Sergey. The issue